What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to do a review on the New York Times bestseller book, The Girl on the Train. And I guess I found out about this book pretty recently, um, although the book's been out for a minute now. Um, but I found out about the book actually on half.com. I was just searching for, some books that I would find interesting to read. And I noticed that The Girl on the Train kept popping up on um, like the recommended list. So I'm like, I keep seeing this. I'm like, okay, this sounds kind of interesting, check it out. And then I find out that they're making it into a movie, but not only making it into a movie, but the movie's coming out, you know, pretty much within the next week or two. So I'm like, okay, let me read this book, And plus, there were so many reviews on this book, and just so much talk about the book. So I'm like, okay, let's buy the book and see what it's about. Let's read it. Okay. And by the way, before I get into the review, I just want to put out there that there will be no spoilers. So this is a no spoiler review. And it's also strictly about the book. All right, so the story pretty much for me, ultimately, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed reading the book. The book is very paced, maybe a little too paced, well paced. Um, you know, in the edition of the book that I have, the story didn't get, didn't really pop until probably like 66 pages in, when they finally get into the actual plot. Because before then they're kind of like setting the tone, giving you backstory and stuff like that, which is good. Paula Hawkins did ultimately do right, but it just maybe was a little, you kind of just wanted the story to start, which it starts, but the story to really get into the whole point of the story, the whole draw of the story. So the character Megan shows up missing, so that's when the story really gets going. um, and Rachel, who's like the protagonist of this story, she has seen Megan and her husband um, when she rides on the train, and she's like, "Oh, they seem like such a nice couple." Um, but then one day she sees Megan with another man, and she's like, "Oh, that's not her husband." Hmm. And then Megan shows up missing. Like, where is Megan? Um, and her story makes um, the national news, I believe. Um, so Rachel, who's also a struggling alcoholic, she's unemployed, she's an alcoholic, her life is in total shambles. Um, you know, she feels like she can be of assistance to the case, you know. And over time, Rachel slowly gets herself involved into this case little by little until she's just, pretty much just too deep into it to turn back, you know. And again, ultimately, I enjoyed reading the story. I say once you hit about the halfway point of the book, that's when it really, really gets to the point when it's like, okay, all right, what's next? What's next? You when you feel like, okay, I want to read what happens next, because you're slowly getting to the bottom of the story. And also, Rachel, the protagonist of the story, she like she's kind of like a blackout drunk. So she's trying to also piece together what happened that night, because she's actually was involved in, like, she was on the same street that Megan was on when Megan disappeared. And, you know, Rachel is like, it gets to a point in the story when you're like, okay, there's so many different suspects you can accuse, you know? You can accuse, you can accuse, the husband, you can accuse um, Megan's therapist, Rachel at one point could probably actually be a suspect. And I think she was at one point. Um, you know, Rachel could be could be a suspect. You don't know who, it gets to that point where you're like, okay, who did it? Like who did this? And the story is kind of set up where you'll get insight. There sections of the book that involve Rachel's point of view. There's sections of the book that involves Megan's point of view, and there's sections of the book that involves Anna's point of view. And Anna is the woman who Rachel's husband or ex-husband had an affair with and left Rachel for. And she, like, they're involved in it too. You know, so you don't know for like, you really, it's just so much you're trying to, figure out, and you're trying to kind of see, who can I cross off the list, and then when you cross somebody off the list, you're like, wait a minute, we found out some more information about this person, so maybe we should put them back on the list, For me, the characters, the characters are not the most endearing characters, and that's because more so of their character flaws versus, um, the character development. Um, I say for me, Rachel is probably the most endearing character of, of the book. Um, Even though at times I was frustrated with Rachel, because I'm like, can you get your life together just for 5 minutes so we can solve this case? Because again, Rachel is a alcoholic. She's a struggling alcoholic, and she's just, very much wanting a drink. But then when she drinks, oftentimes she turns into like a blackout drunk and doesn't remember what happened. And I'm like, you need to remember what happened, since you are, a key element in this case to solving this case, And then, the police are involved too, you know, and they're asking, Rachel questions and questioning her. The police are questioning Rachel's husband, and then, not Rachel's husband, the police are questioning Megan's husband. And then, the police find out about Megan's therapist, so they're questioning him. So it's so much. And ultimately, it's a good story. It's a well-paced story, a psychological thriller. And I'm really interested in seeing how the movie plays out, because because a lot of times it's like, well, movie or the book. And a lot of times it's the book that's the better story. But I'm not sure. I am very interested to see how the movie plays out. And as the story goes on, you get to learn a little bit more and more about the characters, especially Rachel, but also other characters, like Anna and Megan and Tom and Scott and Kamal as well. And also there is a mysterious figure in this book who really plays a small but extremely crucial role in helping Rachel find out the truth about Megan and what happened. And I noticed there was kind of like some symbolism in the book too. I think the train is a symbol, as well as the underpass is definitely a symbol, like symbolizes something. Um, as well, the broken photograph frame of the picture with Megan and her husband Scott. You know. And the house that Rachel and her husband used to live in, but now is the house that Rachel's husband Tom and his the woman that he was cheating on her with, they're living in it now. So I'm pretty sure that's a symbol too. So yeah, just some symbolism in the book as well, if you're interested in that sort of a thing. Um, but yeah, long story short, I thought the book was a very interesting, good read. And I probably learned a couple of vocabulary words too, just for the fact that the book is written more so in British English versus American English, which is fine. But yeah, I was like, what's an articulated lorry? I didn't, I wasn't familiar with that term, so I'm like, what's that? Um, but yeah, ultimately, I would recommend this book for someone who's reading or who would like to read something, that's a mystery, a thriller, you know. They call this like a psychological thriller. So, if you're searching for that sort of a book, I recommend this book. However, I will warn you that probably during the beginning, it's paced very slowly, pace very slowly. So it's going to take a moment for the story to really, um, you know, to really start. You know, Before then, you're getting more so like backstory and the plot setup. You know, so that you're more so like, oh wow, what happened? But when it starts, like, whoa, you know. And then I'll say about halfway in, that's when the story starts to really like keep going and going and going and going, and you keep finding out little bits and pieces of information little by little. You're like, okay, what's next? What's next? I need to find out what's next. So ultimately, I enjoyed the book. I didn't think that it probably, a couple of things probably could have been left out. But perhaps, that was just Paula's way of just, you know, giving the reader more information. So I think I said pretty much all I have to say for the time being. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.